everybody. We're going to see the participants kind of loading in. Paige has started the meeting and you guys are slowly joining, so hopefully you load quickly. But I want to welcome you guys to our webinar today. We're going to be talking about metrics that move business. We're going to be talking about really how do you continue to have success? How do you ensure that you can continue to grow, you can continue to plan? And I'm working with Bryan Poole today. Bryan Poole is one of our favorite users. Bryan and I work closely together. It's great. We chat every couple of weeks to just kind of touch base on a lot of the stuff. So I'm kind of excited to go over what he's going to be sharing with you guys. But what I want to point out as we get going here is one of the big questions that a lot of people ask, and one of the big questions we try to solve and answer Bill Good Marketing is, how do you keep your growth consistent without constantly feeling like you have to plan everything in the moment? How do you feel like I'm just dealing with the fires as they come to me? I'm just dealing with the challenges, the problems, and there's really no predictability to it. One of the big goals of the Bill Good Marketing system, and we do use the term system a lot, is to help you systematize and automate and build processes to do this. And Bryan's done a tremendous job of doing that. So we're going to talk a lot about his systems, his processes, how he handles that from nose to tail to a lot of extent. So Bryan, thank you for joining me today, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good deal. Just a little bit about Bryan and I. Like I said, I am Tony Parmenter. I'm the Senior Vice President of Client Success at Bill Good Marketing. I work with our clients in terms of their implementation of our system, helping them be successful, helping them utilize the tools, the resources, the many things that Bill's been teaching for years, and a lot of the things that we have been trying to help people do. And Bryan's going to share a lot of his experience in doing that. Bryan is a financial advisor, and I'm actually going to let him introduce himself a little bit more here in just a minute when we start talking about his practice. So what I want to start off with is just a little bit of housekeeping for you that are in attendance. Bryan and I have a lot of information to cover, a lot of ground to cover today, but we do want to be able to answer questions because he's going to be going over what are his planning processes, how do he and his team adapt, and so forth and so on. And so as he talks about that, if that brings up questions, concerns, hey, how do you guys deal with this kind of situation? We have a questions and answer channel that you can throw those questions in. I can see those up on my screen. And Bryan and I can address those as those come in. Please understand, sometimes if Bryan's in the middle of a thought, I'll let him kind of finish up what he's doing, and then we'll circle back to some of those questions. If it's super pertinent to what Bryan's saying, we might jump in and ask that question, but throw them in there. I'll keep an eye on them, and we will answer those questions. So that's kind of the first piece. The second piece of housekeeping is for you. This is, what do you get out of attending? Well, hopefully you get a lot of good information from Bryan on how he manages his practice, and it will help you manage your practice more effectively. But we also want to offer you a goodie bag. We always have a goodie bag, an item that will help you kind of take some of the concepts that we're talking about and go put them in practice. Obviously, this is I like to call this our appetizer sampler of the things that we do at Bill Good Marketing to hopefully show you how much more we can do to kind of help your practice and your business. So this is the 12 best practices of a thriving financial advisor. And I think, Bryan, before we began, you were kind of saying this is a document you still kind of refer to and use today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was part of our monthly team meeting. We would break down one topic per month, and the three of us in the team would actually share and read what it means in each of those discussion items and then how it applies to each of us. So I thought it was a great kind of full circle way of having this be in the goodie bag at the end of this webinar.
Perfect. All right. Well, so there you go, guys. And I'm going to turn it over to Bryan for a minute. Bryan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your practice, what you guys are doing, and what your experience is as a financial advisor.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. And like I've mentioned to Tony and Paige when we first set this up, this is not something I do every day, and I appreciate them asking me. I definitely said, hey, this is I hate saying I'm tooting my own horn and saying how I've got things figured out. So, I tried to skip this and kept delaying it. They've asked me a couple times, but finally caved in, and do appreciate them letting me share some things that we do here in the office. So I started in the business in 2000 for a bank brokerage investment arm. And I guess it was called, really a junior broker program or broker training program. And so, went on the desk, got my license, learned a little bit about the ropes. And then after a few months, moved into kind of a junior broker role where I was under 3 or 4 senior advisors. And then a few years after that, was afforded the opportunity where they carved out a territory where we served certain branches in the Birmingham area. In 2004, I decided to further my career and sit and pass the CFP exam. So that's something I've cherished having for 20 years now plus. And then a couple of years after that, my business grew to the point where I felt like needing a junior advisor to help support our practice was important. And then I guess maybe around that same time, kept hearing about this Bill Good marketing system, how it could help grow and protect my business. And something I tossed around with our business and our team and said, I think this is something we should invest in, spending our own money, flying out to Utah and making it, known that this is a commitment that we're going to have for many years to come. And in that conference, it was important and imperative that we hired a computer operator. So we, got back quickly, started hiring a computer operator, and then just saw our business kind of, excel and increase. And so, been on the system for I don't know how many years now, but I know it's been a meaningful impact to our business growth. And then, from some years after that, we, hired an RM. We currently have a 3-person team. And then in 2024, we were afforded the opportunity to leave the bank brokerage division. So I'm currently now on the Wells Fargo Finance Independent side of the business.
That's terrific. And where are you located right now?
Yeah, we're in Birmingham, Alabama. And if you don't know, it can get cold down here too. We're freezing. So you see me shivering, it's not side effects. It's just I'm cold. So
it's getting hit by the cold front too. Yeah. And tell us a little bit about the main clients you serve. Who are the main people that you're kind of talking to and working with, and what is the bread and butter of your business?
Yeah, typically our business is built up among pre-retirees and retired individuals and their families. That's what we normally do.
And how do you kind of focus your practice? What would you say is your specialty or your strength?
Yeah, I think we pride ourselves in the multi-generational side of the business. It's not uncommon for us to have 3 generations of clients that we serve in our households. And, the client experience, the holistic financial planning process is what we really try to deliver to our clients.
Terrific. And I'm guessing how many, if you don't mind me asking, how many client households roughly are you guys serving these days?
Yeah, about 220 with about 350 AUM. Yeah.
So yeah, with 220 client households, there's a lot of kind of keeping all your ducks in a row and a lot of keeping everything organized that has to be in place to be able to do that, I'm sure.
Right.
And then you mentioned your 3-person team.
Yes.
You mentioned a relationship manager, yourself. Tell me a little bit about your team and what's your main role, your main focus from day to day on the team.
Yeah, I'm the managing partner and the senior FA. My other partner has been in the business with me for a little over 10 years now. We partner up on some of the relationships and households. He has his own set of clients. I have my own some, and we share in some as well. And then Aubrey is really the backbone of the practice. I always say that you cannot survive without a strong service team. And honestly, I would have to give a lot of kudos to her with this growth and success that we've had over the number of years is really because of the support that I've had with what Aubrey does for me every day.
Good. Well, great. So as we get going then and talking a little bit more about how you've achieved that, I want to talk about a problem that Bill has talked about. And Bryan probably remembers hearing Bill say this at some point, or multiple points, I don't know. But Bill often says that one of the biggest problems that happens in the industry is that advisors, number one, they get a bad idea and they stick with it. They get something that, somebody told them, hey, this is the way you grow your business. This is the way you do things. And they just commit to it. And they take that thing all the way until their nose is buried in the sand with it. And the second thing is, and this one also destroys businesses, is they get a great idea. It goes really well for a little while. And then in the midst of dealing with fires and people coming through the door and changes in staff, they forget to do it and they abandon it. And so obviously what we want to do is we want to talk about planning. We want to talk about tracking how you're doing things. We want to talk about the processes you use in your business to ensure, in your case, Bryan, how have you guys identified these ideas, found out it was a bad idea, and then said it's gone rather than just continuing it forever? and how you guys have identified good ideas and said, this one's working. Let's put more gas on this fire and make sure that this takes off. So for all of you, as not sexy as it may sound, you do have to have a system, a process for keeping an eye on all these different lines you have in the water. You've got your referral lines, you've got your new client asset lines, you get your prospecting lines, and all these lines are going. Plus, you're trying to manage a business. Bryan's got, two team members and he's got a partner. There's a lot of things you have to keep track of. And if you don't have a system down, then one of these lines gets cut and drifts away, or you miss the fish that was on the end of that line. And so that's what we want to talk about. What is the system? What is the process to ensure you can manage all of that? So Bryan, you have a lot of clients that we talked about. You have a lot going on in your office and in your personal life. Really, can you kind of start walking us through how do you and your team really kind of keep a handle on all of this?
Yeah, I think for us, it's really about the planning component. We have to all be on the same page, with what we're doing every day, all the, rowing in the same direction. And so having continued conversations along the way with, is this working? Is it not working? What can I do to help alleviate some of the problems that you have at your desk? What are our successes? And are some of the things that we're implementing, is it working? Could it be tweaked to make it work even better? And I think just being disciplined with those set of processes that are out there. I think
Mhm.
when you set certain things that you're doing on a weekly or monthly or annual basis, it becomes second nature for you. So all those efficiencies sort of start working in your practice to be able to scale up and to be able to grow your business, and then also, create a better client experience for us. Is what we're trying to achieve.
Great. Perfect. So, 30,000 foot view. Why do you track data? Why do you track performance? Why do you track return on investment? How do you track those things? And then how do you evaluate those things? So, I guess walk us through your planning process. What are you actually tracking? What are you actually planning for?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for us, kind of going back a little bit of the history, I was very fortunate to, learn the ropes under, great advisors. Some were great at, bringing in new assets. Others were, had a holistic approach with their practice with planning. And then one was really good at, tracking to the penny where his revenue was coming from. When we were in the, bank brokerage division, you had territories. You could cover branches throughout the city, but you also called on private bankers and business bankers, your social connections. And as you built a business, you were bringing in more assets from existing clients, or you're being introduced to new clients through different resources. And so it was important to me to kind of figure out where our business was coming from, where the money, where the bread was being buttered. And so for us, that just, again, as a system we built to be able to track that. I know we're going to talk about that in more detail coming up, but about 8 years ago, I felt like it was time to step away from the day to day of the operations of the business at some point during the year. And in the month of December, it gets a little slow. We're finishing up cap gains, stuff and RMDs. But how do we take an assessment of where we were, the previous year, and how do we set our certain goals going for the year forward? So, you know, like it shows on the slide, I would invite partners within our company and then external partners to help create a business planning week. It's usually about 4 days, and the whole team's involved. And we bring in the internal partners where, if we're wanting to advance our knowledge base on the planning software that we have or the technology with our CRM, if we wanted to kind of dive into more of the marketing structure of how we can bring out, LinkedIn and all the other messaging systems within our program, we spend a week just sitting down with partners inside the firm and understanding more of how we can learn to run a better, efficient business and create a better marketing. And, being top of mind awareness is really kind of important to us. And then externally, we talk, invite partners to come in, and we discuss sort of what they think the year is going to look like with the market, and how many rate cuts, and what do you think about geopolitical issues and whatnot. But then I also ask those partners to share best practices from some of the other businesses they call on, right? Because I don't have all the answers, and I'm looking to steal great ideas from other teams. And so if there's a client event that's been very successful, I want to know about it. how do they segment their business a little bit better than maybe what I'm doing? What are the deliverable service items that they have with their book, and how can I implement maybe some new ideas? And so we spent a whole week with that, and then each individually, I meet with the team members, and we discuss. We actually write down and review individually and as a group. What did we feel like in the given year were we successful in? And it does kind of stay and evolved around really our three main topics that we have, our themes. And then what are some of the challenges that we came across this year? Was it, some things that we just didn't feel like we hit on all marks and that we want to focus on for the next year to come? And then through that, we established three main themes for the year going forward. And so that's kind of, our business planning week in a nutshell.
Okay. And then that business planning week will feed into your monthly meetings, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But let's talk about your themes. How do you guys establish your themes? What is the purpose of the themes, and how do they kind of then inform your business?
Yeah, I mean, those are the three themes that we've had for the last couple of years. I've been in this business 25 years, and when you build a business that started out in transactional in nature and then evolved when the more advisory business came about, we've got again, it's something I work on every year, is how efficient we run with our services we provide and the products we offer for our clients. And so, as you can see, the number one is business efficiencies and practice management. Always spending areas in our practice that are time wasters. What do we do, and what did we do in the given year that help protect our business? We want to be very purposeful with our client experiences. And so, coming down to the whole segmentation component of what we've worked on this year, and the strategies that we have with that, and our marketing, theme that we have, that's really kind of, how we run or how we discuss our business efficiencies and practice management. And then organic growth, we're always looking for, more assets, right? We want to grow our business and continue to add more wallet share with our clients, because we may not have it all. There may be a life event down the road through our touch base calls that we've got to make sure we document that. And so we're ongoingly discussing each month, what did we bring in, and where did it come from, and how did we get it from start A to point, to the end. And so our organic growth is really growing within our own internal client base. And then our last theme is inorganic growth with new client acquisitions. What is our process on bringing in new households? So those are our three main themes that we talk about during business planning week.
And going back to what we talked about, the questions you ask your team and the questions you guys discuss, kind of going to Bill's, you guys talk about the things that you did and were successful. And then how does that then impact what you plan for the coming year?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, if it worked, let's keep doing it, right? If it worked, but it was maybe not to the fullest extent, how can we establish certain processes in our business that allows us to be better and more efficient with that? And obviously, you can measure organic growth with net new assets, that kind of stuff. But for us, when we implement something new, it's been a couple of years since we've talked about this, but and every year we discuss it when we establish this. Is there anything that we're doing and that we're adding to our day-to-day operations? Is it meaningful, and is it measurable? And for us, being meaningful is, how does this impact, and where can we put that in a category for our three main things? We don't want to just try something and it not be meaningful with what we try to accomplish in our practice every day. And then is there some point in time that we can go back and look, did that new theme or new project or new task or something that we created, did it measure some successful to our radar? Did it have success? If it wasn't successful, we need to go ahead and kick it to the curb and not look at it again. If it was, so being measurable for us when we look back is important as well. So is it meaningful and is it measurable? So
Okay, great. Let's see. Robert asked a question, and maybe we'll touch on this a little bit down the road, but just lightly, one of the questions he asked, talking again about your three themes, he says, "What is your process for bringing in new households? What's your focus?" And mainly on the inorganic side. What is the main process you guys use?
yeah, I decided that we're not we're not great at seminars. We said something I wanted to tackle, and so we don't really do a lot of seminars. A lot of it is social connections. You know, promoting referrals is very big in our practice, and that's something that Tony and I we've worked on. He can agree that being very efficient and effective with our promoting referrals in our touch base scripts, as well as in our client review meetings, um, post scripts for our promoting referrals, establishing a very strong trusted contact list, and then really trying to build into the COI, the accountants, the attorneys, the other folks, professionals that we call on and we have shared relationships with. So those are really kind of our main kind of key drivers on try to how we build in our inorganic growth in our practice.
Right. Um, all right. And so as we talk, then the next phase then is really taking all of this big year plan, your three themes, and starting as a team to put this into practice. And so let's talk about you guys' planning process and month to month, week to week, how you guys are doing this.
Yeah. So like it shows on the slide, I know it's been promoted to have a weekly or every other week. We decided it's best to do a monthly staff meeting since we're so close with each other, and we talk multiple times throughout the day. But I think it starts with if we look at that first topic, daily 5 minute check in with our we both established model days within our practice, and I think model days are really kind of in my world, they're sort of a vacuum, right? Because they're never going to get followed exact. So I think it's a roadmap on how we want to operate our day. But one of the most important things that we do every day is in the morning when my RM and I meet to talk about what's going on with the day, what meetings do I have coming up, what paperwork may be required to get some business across the finish line. What are her touch base calls for the day? She has a scheduled number of calls that she's making, and she assigns those out on uh, our CRM system. And so, what calls is she's making during the day? So maybe I can add a little tidbit to the call, and when she's going through her topics with her touch base calls, maybe I can say, hey, why don't you add in or ask about the trip that Mrs. Jones just came back from, or hey, last time we were on the phone together, she said she had a granddaughter graduating from college this spring or whatnot. So, we spend at least 5 to 10 minutes, just quick, and it's a routine thing. It's at 8:40 every morning, and so that's one of the kind of daily operations that we have within our practice.
And so this is kind of just like a huddle, a coordination meeting between you and your assistant to make sure you're on the same page.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
And so, go ahead.
I was just going to say, he mentioned the model day, and the model day is a time management strategy that we teach. And one of the important things with this time management strategy is, like he's talking about, you want to have important, crucial touch bases with crucial players. He hit something really briefly there. He said if he's going to be making some calls today, or he's going to be talking to a particular client today, and maybe Aubrey's talked to one of those folks, or she maybe had a recent engagement with them, any information that she gathered is useful for you. Number one, to show the clients that you guys are a team and you're talking. If she talked to Tony and Tony said, hey, Aubrey, yeah, my dog just had puppies, and she sent out a nice, gift basket of bones or something, and she tells you, and then you and I have a meeting, you ask how the puppies are doing. Those sorts of little coordination points seem small, but how much of an impact do they have on your client meetings? And then ultimately, again, going back to your three objectives, your three themes, how much impact do they have in creating the kind of relationship where those clients are going to bring you the assets and introduce you to their family and friends?
Yeah, I think for us, it's just all about staying on the same page, right? And being honest with each other. If we're falling short with what we try to set out to accomplish, it's not necessarily a numeric thing for us anymore. I mean, it used to be as I was building my business, what tiers we were hitting with our production or whatnot. But I think it's more about the activities that create those successes with the numbers. And so, that other topic, embracing technology, I think it's very important for us to have, and whatever system someone has, is having a CRM and being able to create certain things that are automated, right? So when they become automated, they become second nature, like I mentioned before. And so, Aubrey and I meet on a monthly basis just to talk about a marketing plan. And during our business planning week, we spend an hour just dedicated to mapping out the first 6 months of our marketing plan and filling in the spots. And typically they run similar in a year over year, where in January, there's a certain topical theme. We'll send out the Wilson letters, we'll send out holiday letters, we'll have, certain LinkedIn strategy, certain market commentary strategy, client events and education events, and, that kind of stuff. What are we doing throughout each month? And are there any operational projects that we're, working on through either converting from one planning software to another, or updating our CRM to make sure it's up to date for this 2026 year. But I think if you don't embrace technology, because everything goes on our computer system, tasks, counter items, somewhat opportunities, and I know it's going to get better when we convert to a new system here in the next couple of months. But being able to keep that going, knowing where your business is coming from, and how you can get to that next level, I think is so much easier when we embrace technology for us. And that's very important to everyone to be on the same page. And then obviously the law, right? Once we have a note, or attempted contact with a prospect or client, we have to get it into the system, right? So that is a non-negotiable with anybody in our practice, and it gets addressed very quickly if we kind of fall short of that.
And how important is technology? Because we talked about the fact that you've got 220 client households. That's a lot of review meetings. And I'm sure you're meeting with different clients on different frequencies based on their needs.
Yeah.
You're talking to clients on different frequencies. How critical is the technology and how you guys utilize that or leverage that to save you time so that you don't have to invent that in the moment?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I feel like I'm young enough to continue to embrace it and adapt to change and whatnot. And so some years ago, we were running a segmentation model that was based upon, say, assets, revenue, and likability, that kind of stuff. And then I was working with you, Tony, or Matt, or someone else in the office, and discussing really there's multiple other levels of segmentation that you can have within the system. And so after going through that exercise, and I don't know if we'll do this on the call to talk about it in more detail, but I found that I was serving and offering a lot more to really what I needed to have. There were a fair number of clients that really needed to be kind of scaled back in terms of their contact frequency and their client reviews and the services offered. And so it helped, free up my time. And then we were able to, through that scoring system, map out, kind of a staggered time of when clients were going to get calls and when they were going to go through their client reviews. And then that just kind of transitioned to sort of, okay, during these client reviews, do we have a dedicated system on that? And so working with my Bill Good coach, Tony, of course, I tell you, it's helped so much. And I don't know, if we can pinpoint to the exact dollar, but every penny that I've invested in the coaching and in the system has come back to me in at least 3 or 4 tenfold with our business, and just the, managing the day type stuff with the households that we have.
That's awesome. Yeah. And what you're referencing there, for those of you who aren't yet members of the system, we go through a client segmentation process where we look at what the specific needs of the clients are, and we evaluate revenue and trailing 12, future potential. We talk about referrals. We talk about referral potential. We talk about what the specific needs of those clients are, because there are some clients who have complex financial needs, should be meeting with you, talking with you more often. But that should be beneficial to them and beneficial to you. By talking to those people more frequently, they should be able to introduce you to their family and friends. They should be able to, talk to you about that business they're selling next year, and it's just potential 1.2 million in revenue or something to that effect. And so, that segmentation is important. And then you guys leverage your CRM, your firm's CRM, to then help you manage who receives calls on which frequency, who receives meetings on which frequency. And then you guys just run the process. You don't have to, how often have you had to come in and try and figure out who you're supposed to be meeting with this month versus who you're supposed to be calling?
Never. I mean, it's built, and it just, something I do every month with my RM is we'll look at it, and it's the way it's created is since we've scheduled it, it shows up. And so say for the month of February, I can hit a button, it'll say per segment, which clients
Mhm.
are due a touch base call, which clients are due a client review. And Aubrey and I at the beginning of each month, she sets it in order, and it's really, we don't discuss it, right? And it's, she knows what she's supposed to do every day when she's making those touch base calls, and when she's scheduling a client review, she knows what the next step is for that once that client review is established. And that's something that we worked on in 25 to create more of a defined agenda and steps that are created before the client review meeting. In the meeting, what are we discussing? And then after the meeting, what are we trying to accomplish? And so that's something I worked on very, hard at. We established it this past year, and I feel like it's been very helpful in creating structure around what we're doing for our clients, and then being able to describe to the client in a document that we've created called, our services that we provide based upon the tier of our clients, what we provide to our clients. And it's actually, helped in the last couple, meetings that I've had where, shared this document, the client keeps the document. And at the end, it's just a simple, note. Hey, while you're with your family over the holidays, if you're talking to your cousin at the table, and they talk about, they're talking about, what they're doing with their advisor, pull this out and show them and say,
Mhm.
this is what Brian's providing for us in our practice and what he does for me. And if that's not something that they're getting from their advisor, then maybe, your cousin should come in and see us. So,
Yeah.
it's a small little way that we're being able to promote a referral that I didn't even think about when we first created this services provided. Because for us, it was more about, the top tier clients get a whole list, and then, you kind of pare that back. But it was something that we started, and it's a lot of positive reception from the clients. Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll certainly bring this topic up when we're getting together or whatnot. So
Good. And so then the third item here is your monthly meeting. So you've talked about your daily coordinations, you've got your technology, then the monthly meeting comes along. What do you guys dive into? We've got you guys' agenda that you guys have kind of created on
yeah.
screen. What is the purpose of that meeting, and what do you hope whenever you hold that meeting is the end objective? What do you get out of it, and what do you walk through to get there?
Yeah, I think it's a quick hour and a half, on a monthly basis to us just to summarize the month previous. It's usually the first Thursday of every month, unless somebody's out of town. And so in that first topic, I bring it up. I say, all right, let's talk about, our business efficiencies and practice management. And we'll go around the room, and Sam will, mention some certain things in the given month that he had done it through some training classes or some additional segmentation or whatnot. And then, he'll talk about organic growth and any new wallet share items that he brought in and any new clients he brought on board. And, what did he do in those steps leading up to that to provide that growth in the wallet share, the new client acquisition strategy. And then obviously, Aubrey goes through her, three themes, and then I'll go through mine. And then we'll talk about maybe some misses, some things that, that we tried and it didn't work, or, maybe some pivot items that we just, fell short of because the month got busy and we were out of town a lot or whatnot. So that's that first, section there. And then Aubrey goes through, what the Bill Good system is providing through either webinars or the letters and the, e-gorillas that are out there. And, she and I will kind of go offline and say, are there, is there something new that's been created since we created our marketing plan that maybe we want to
Mhm.
slide in for that month? And so, I'll occasionally get on a webinar that's been recorded, or she'll show me an article or some letter that's been approved through the system that maybe we want to kind of bring into the fold. And so there's a ongoing conversation about our monthly marketing strategy when we do this. And then the opportunities report. What do we have pending? What are the things that I may need help on to get across the finish line, or maybe we're just waiting for someone to fully retire, and they've told us they're retiring, whatnot. Aubrey shares with us, what's going on with our SLM service level matrix, and which clients maybe we didn't get a chance to get a hold of. Maybe we've called a couple times and Bryan, what do you need? Do we need a letter to go out, to say, hey, we've tried you a couple times. It's time for your review, or should we keep, calling somebody, or maybe we should, see what their trusted contacts up to and say, hey, Mary Jo, hadn't heard from her in a while. Has she been out of town? That kind of stuff. So, and then any pending, items that she may need for, operational things, any long-term projects. If we're working on, find the money, or something like that, or, a operational thing with our planning software. So that's, and then I'll go through, what the month looked like for me, what was the actual numbers, what were the new clients that we brought in, was that month better than the previous month? What were some of the key components that helped drive that month? You know, we have a decently extensive unit investment trust business as well as advisory. So I'll talk about the numerics on, UIT roles and, did we have any growth in that? Sam will share the same thing. And then on the next page, there we go. And then Aubrey goes through, any dashboard. That's kind of what we call our, our contact management system dashboard. Any long-term projects. We'll quickly discuss, what's going on with any, find the money or pre-retirement campaigns. What are the educational entertainment events we have coming up this month? We don't do seminars. I probably should leave that off. But and then who's out of town, right? Who's going to be out next week or that kind of stuff. And then we do that on a monthly basis. But every quarter, at the first month of each quarter, we take this meeting offline, right? We take it out of the office. We have a conference room in the office, which is great. We'll bring in lunch. We want to answer our phones during these monthlies, but 4 times a year, I feel like it's great to kind of get away from the building. And so we'll pick a pub, a restaurant, a bar, or something. We'll do it after market close. The spouses know, if somebody's got to get to a soccer practice, that, husband or wife needs to do that because we're going to take some time away and celebrate the quarter that we'd previously had. And we'd spend, same amount of time working on this as we do on a regular monthly, but then it's a little bit extra, how are the kids, who's involved in karate, what belt are they in, what cool vacation y'all have coming up? Is there any, anybody been sick in the family? So we spend really a lot of time out of the office, on that, because for us, I feel like our team is like a family, right? It's, I want to know, when, your kid lost their first tooth, and I want to know when, they graduated from kindergarten, and they want to know about our kids and how they're doing in college and all that kind of stuff. And so, the time away celebrating that quarter allows us to kind of just debrief and talk about other things that aren't just the day to day and what's going on at the office.
Right. Terrific. And Robert, kind of when you were talking about you guys as part of your monthly and quarterly planning, you talk about the upcoming events. He asked what are some of the client events that you guys do or that you guys hold?
Yeah. So we just what we've tried, and it's worked. I know we've tweaked it a little bit, Tony, on kind of who we invite and the messaging of that invitation. So we map out and trying to go. So every month we do a birthday lunch. And so if it's a key client of ours, and their birthday's the month of January, we pick one day and we have it at a local restaurant that has its own little kind of set-in area. And we invite that client to bring their spouse or a friend. And we really encourage that. That is very important. But we want to also say we're celebrating your birthday this month and come to our lunch. And we don't talk business. I don't bring slides or handouts. It's just total celebration. In the month of February, I do a widows luncheon at our country club. And so, we have a fair number. So we've got plenty to choose from. And we, have a luncheon. Again, it's more celebratory. And the fact that we're thanking them for their, longstanding business with us. And we also invite them to bring, a friend from the neighborhood or a daughter or a son, somebody that, would feel like it would want to, celebrate their birthday or the Valentine's Day kind of thing. Gardening events, golf events, we've done fly fishing events. We've rented out a minor league baseball park hospitality suite. Let's see what else we've done. Tried a lot.
You did a cooking event last year too.
Yeah. Gardening. Yeah, we have a local botanical gardens with within a couple miles of our office. So we have we kind of rent a room out, provide a very wrap lunch, very simple lunch, but we have an expert that talks about either vegetables or bonsai or something. It kind of depends on the year. And then they do a guided tour in the botanical gardens. Again, promoting bringing an additional person with you, but these are client events. Cooking event. There's a hotel near us that has a room, and we hire a chef, and we've done it for I don't know 7 or 8 years now. Very very small in nature. Again, bring in additional somebody else, and he goes through, and everybody gets their hands dirty, and we get involved in the cooking, and then we eat the meal that we prepare, and usually there's a bar, so everybody has a great time. Yeah, cooking, gardening. Some years ago, we rented out a movie theater for parents, and showed a Christmas themed movie in the December time frame, and that was well received as well. We had clients that would bring their grandkids or the kids and whatnot, and so that was neat. That was fun. But yeah, we've tried it. We tried a lot.
There
I
you
know
go.
you
And
know,
and the goal of all this is to build the relationship with the clients, make sure
yeah,
you hold on to them, but to meet, like you said, meet who they care about, who they're concerned about in terms of the services you provide. And that gives you the opportunities to meet these folks and potentially build relationships with them over time.
yeah. Again, I want to again, I think what I said earlier is I think what we're really good at is having multi generational practice, where it's not uncommon that one week I'll be talking to the grandmother about legacy planning and long term care and cybersecurity. And then through introductions and through conversations with that client, they had previously introduced us to their kids, and we share with them what services we provide to our clients, and they end up becoming clients of ours as well, and talking with them about pre-retirement stuff, and how to help educate their kids and money management issues, and planning software to feel comfortable about what life looks like in retirement, how to help mom and dad with any, again, cybersecurity. I mean, it is fraud and
Yeah.
whatnot, elder abuse and that kind of stuff is very important to us. And then the very next day I may be meeting with the grandchild, and they're just starting their career, and they want to know about Roth IRAs and traditional IRAs, and they're having kids too, and it's what's the best college savings plan and that kind of stuff. So if we don't create an atmosphere to our clients that it's welcoming to bring in and introduce us to their family. We again, I think one of the themes is when clients die, assets may fly. We don't want them to fly. We don't
Yeah.
want them to fly away.
Yeah.
So that's very important to us, to have that top of mind awareness with our practice, with our clients, and to be able to strengthen that, build upon that, and then hopefully promote introductions.
Terrific. And then this slide, you kind of answered this, but like we talked about as you go through your monthly meeting, these are the things that these are the questions you're answering. These are the data points that you're capturing each month, right? These are
Yeah,
what you're trying to validate and say, what did we do well? What do we got to work on? What is measurable, right?
that's right. That's right. Yeah. So when it comes to the numbers, for me, it's just the way I'm programmed. Starting in this business, it was more transactional, right, basis, and business was coming in from different sources. It's evolved through to more of the advisory basis, and we're not RIAs, but it's there are things that we do every day, in our business that creates some sort of commissionable product or something that adds to our business revenue. And so I want to be able to track that in our system. And it's obviously, I told Tony this when we were putting this together. I said, there's no rocket scientist from MIT created this. It's just something I did over the years, and, kind of tweaked it a little bit. But for me, it's just the way I'm wired. And so I could go back, I don't know, 20 plus years, and I could pull up on a daily basis, what I did for that day. And so was our business coming in from, a new client acquisition or my partner that I have. But was it organic business? Was it a,
Mhm.
annuity that we, were able to, come across the finish line? Was it a unit investment trust that was rolling over? Was it a bond? Was it a, something mutual fund addition? What was it? And then obviously, was it a trail? We have different types of trails that come in through our business. It's mutual fund, traditional advisory, some of the annuities. PC, line of credits within the brokerage accounts, that kind of stuff. And so with this, simple Excel spreadsheet, I'm tracking, the clients, what data is posted. Did it come from an introduction from an existing client? What's the account number? What was the product that was offered? And we
Mhm.
ongoingly, and it comes back to the business efficiencies with us is, are we, offering too much to the certain clients, and should we sort of scale that? And that's always a way that we kind of look back in the year and go, what really helps drive our business? Is it, mostly trails now versus transactional business? If it's transactional business, is it mostly unit investment trust? And are we spending a lot of time with multiple different products within that lineup, where we're having to ping that client every 3 or 4 months to discuss that role? So for me to be able to track, what product it was, what the value of that business was, and then what that revenue was generated, and that gets summarized and summarized at the bottom, and then I transfer that information over to what I call a running total, and a running total basically just goes January through December, and I have all that listed out, and then I have the last, I don't know, 17 years of running totals to kind of track, where we started, and it's fun to look back and say, yeah, when did I become a $1 million producer? When am I going to become a $2 million producer? That kind of stuff. And
Right.
I think for us, and I don't know if this is the time, I know I wanted to share it, but for us, it's why are we tracking this? Is again, what was successful in that month? What did we do? What did we accomplish? And it's not necessarily the numbers itself. It's what did we do prior to that number being created onto that Excel spreadsheet? Where did that money come from? How was it documented? Did we have a system in place that was either through our touch base calls, our client reviews, our efficiency within those? Did we touch on all those topics within our contact review strategy? Was it a new client? Where did that new client come from? Was it through an introduction through a client event or a social meeting or whatnot? And what did I do? What are the blocking and tackling activities that we did during the month to result into this numeric, spreadsheet that I create? And then at the end of each year, I'll go through and I'll look at, the great months, and I'll say, oh gosh,
Yeah.
let's look into that month. And then I'll say, okay, well, that was a pretty nice month. What did I do that month? And I'll look at the monthly calendar, and I'll look at the call sheets, and I'll look at the number of meetings. And I'll say, yeah, it might have been a great big life insurance business that we had, or it could have been a very successful unit investment trust role, or it could have been, the market's just been doing great or whatever. But then I'll look at the bad months. I'll look at the red months and say, all right, so what caused this to be a little less than what I expected it to be, and maybe below the average? And so we'll do an honest assessment of that month and look at, was it just because we were out of town, or did we just kind of fall short of some of the things that we set out to want to accomplish that month? So it's an ongoing, I guess, honest discussion with myself and with my team on what has provided the success, and what can we do to kind of replicate and continue that, and then what has provided some of the challenges, and what are the things that we can do to maybe eliminate or kind of delete, some of those red flags, and what things that we have.
And I think as a lot of people look at this, because this is fantastic, and thank you for this. As you look at this volume, because you said you've got this going back 17 years, you can go back 17 years and see why 2012 was better than 2008, or whatever the year may be.
Yeah.
How do you avoid paralysis from all the analysis of all this data? How do you avoid just getting sucked down the rabbit hole and just analyzing everything, as opposed to, like you said, every month you guys are making decisions on what you need to do next? How do you make decisions and avoid paralysis?
Yeah, I think for us, it's just trial and error. I think probably at the beginning when I first started tracking this, it was all about the numbers, and looking at it and trying to break it down on what caused that, what was that month. And for us, it's just a quick viewpoint. The numerics are a quick viewpoint, but it's what activities created that viewpoint, or what did we do in that month? And
Mhm.
so, by setting, at the beginning of the year, our three central themes, and ongoingly discussing what are we trying to accomplish this year? What are the activities that were evolved, and what are the goals we're trying to hit? to either be part in the first one, the second, or organic or inorganic growth. And then on a monthly basis, what are those things that we continually discuss in our team meetings? And like I mentioned earlier, it's all about, creating some sort of system that then becomes second nature. And for us, we don't spend a lot of time analyzing the numbers. We break it down to determine what factors cause those numbers to be either a very successful month or something that maybe created a challenge for us.
Terrific. Good. Well, I think we're nearing the end here. So I'm just going to throw this out to everybody here. If you've got questions, now's a great time to throw them in the question box so that we can ask those questions. One did come in, Brian, and maybe you can answer this for us. Robert Johnson again said, you mentioned that you do some type of transactional business every day, and you ended that with a question. So I guess what kind of transactional business every day? What is it you're tracking on a day-to-day basis that you mentioned there?
Yeah, so in the morning time, and it's probably not every day, but it just because our book size and the clients that we have, there's something going on that I'm involved in. Uh, that's also again some of the things that I ask myself: Are we being as efficient in our practice, and do we gravitate more toward the RIA model? And I felt like 25 years in the business, and you built a business of municipal bonds, stock clients, mutual funds, unit investment trusts, and then a large practice of advisory business. And so it could be, on a given day, we may have a couple, municipal bond trades, and then we have some large government agency clients that, are not under the advisory side. They're more transaction based. So we've got treasuries and govies that we're providing solutions for our clients. There are some occasionally annuities that, come out of surrender that have a very low roll rate, and the client doesn't need the assets, so we're converting those into something else. And then unit investment trust, I would say, is probably those can roll almost every day, if depending on the size of your practice. And so that's why that spreadsheet could be 50 line items long, or it could be 20 line items long. So it just depends on what's going on in a given month.
Okay, beautiful. And then Scott asks, how much of the spreadsheet do you actually share with your team whether you do it in the monthly meetings, quarterly meetings? How much of this data are you actually sharing with them?
Oh, they know it all. I mean, we don't have any secrets. It's. I mean, they know where it's coming from. I think it's just because we've done it so much, and having the right team. And again, I'm just going to keep reiterating that one of the hardest things you can have is not having the right team that's not wanting to row in the same boat that you're wanting to row in the same direction. And so, for us, I'm very blessed to have a strong, operations relationship manager person who is bought into the same goals that I have, and that we've known each other for many years. And, we kind of can, get the same wavelength. When I'm having a bad day, she's there to encourage me. And when she's having a bad day, I know to just avoid her. I'm just kidding. But no, they see it all. They know. I mean, we don't hide anything from each other. So they see all this.
Awesome. So I guess just kind of in summary, it sounds like you got a lot of processes, and then you just got bigger processes that manage them all. I mean, you've got processes in terms of how you talk to your clients and what frequency, processes in terms of how often you meet with them and review their assets, processes in how you handle these UITs and these rollovers and these other things that come knocking at the door every month, processes in how you send out your marketing. And you guys use that monthly coordination as your overriding process to make sure that each one of those things is moving along. And by doing this, and this goes back to the original question, the original thing we started talking about, keeping these metrics and focusing on this is designed to help you guys just say, last month was great. Here's the things we did well. Here's the things we can do better, and plan out the process for the coming month. Is that a pretty good summary of how you guys are managing this thing each month?
Yeah, and I think it's also great to have an accountability partner, and I'm obviously going to give you like kudos, Tony. It's we set out certain goals for ourselves, and I've had to mention, in some occasion, hey, I'd like to slow it down a little bit because I feel like this is more than I can chew at this moment with all the other stuff we've got going on. And Tony understands what's important to us. And when I get a thing that I want to work on for that quarter or that year, I want to say, hey, I think that's very important to creating some more business efficiencies with our practice, or being able to clearly define what we're providing for our clients, and then creating a system around that. Again, we have a system for unit investment trust roles, marketing strategies, SLM contacts, segmentation, business planning months, or business review month, business planning week. Again, if I can automate it and it's there, I can touch it. Somebody else can touch it. We can knock it out, move on, and get to doing something else. Because I don't want to work till 5:30 or 6 every night. I don't want to work on the weekends, and I certainly in the spring and summer I don't want to work on Friday afternoons either. So I want
Yeah.
to be out there playing golf. So I want to be,
Yeah.
we're there, and we're working hard. When we're out, we're having fun. So
Yeah. Brian and I, we both believe in playing hard, right?
that's right. That's right. That's right.
Good deal. Well, as we kind of reach the end here, then what I want to mention to everybody, thank you, Brian, for sharing this. This is awesome. And
Thank
I
you.
hopefully this is going to be helpful to everybody else. Brian has worked with us and has worked through the system. He already had a lot of great processes and systems in place when he came to us. We like being able to add to that. And so what I want to just tell you guys is the Bill Good Marketing System is designed to help financial advisors like Brian, like yourselves, build this out. We have a 2-year a 2-year roadmap or a 2-year plan that we would love to do with you guys. If you go to this QR code, will take you to a site where you can fill out a survey. One of the things we offer is that free 2-year roadmap. The design there is for us to look at the kinds of things that Brian's talked about. Where are you strong on your client marketing? Where are you strong or weak on the way you're handling your regular contact and communication? Are you engaging your clients in such a way that it's generating referrals? Are you engaging partners? He mentioned his COIs and his other partners that he's engaging to generate referrals. Are you leveraging all of those outside assets to the best of your ability? And sometimes you'll say, we're doing great, but man, my hair's on fire. I come into the office every day and I got to make 50 calls and I got to figure out where that thing is. And so maybe the problem is you need a system and a process like Brian talked about to help you do that. So what I would suggest is scan this code, go there and take the survey. If you're interested in the 2-year roadmap, I think it is a great beneficial thing. Sign up for that. One of our team will reach out to you and do a 2-year roadmap. If you guys will do that for us, go there and fill out that survey. You'll get this 12 best practices. And as Brian said, he got this a while back in one of the webinars he attended, and he and his team take these 12 practices and they bring them up each month and talk about them and say, okay, how are we doing on this practice this month? And they just kind of continue using this procedural, this systematic process to continue to evolve and better their practice and better their team. I think it's something that would be of tremendous benefit to all of you. I love working with Brian. Brian, thanks for the nods here and there. It's been a lot of fun working with these guys. And we have a lot of great coaches that we would love to work with you guys and show you the same thing. So Brian, thank you very much for sharing all this with us today. So again, there's the QR code on screen. You can scan that with your cell phone. If you're on your cell phone, Paige threw into the chat. She threw a link that will take you directly there, and you guys can sign up there as well. Brian, thank you guys again. And
Thank you,
there are no
Paige.
other. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Paige. Thank you, everybody else. And we hope to talk to you soon.